in many different aspects, from things like council tax to council snooping. And that was really the subject of last week's show. We kind of joined up these things that we've been talking about for several weeks. And also we brought in Crime Stoppers, and how Crime Stoppers had basically been shut down by us. They had loads of people taken off Crime Stoppers because they were abusing the Crime Stoppers website. Who's they? Well, the police upload the pictures, but Crime Stoppers let them do that, and Crime Stoppers put them into the public. Now, this ties in to something that happened a few days ago. Following last week's show, I had a look on the Twitter feed of Waltham Forest Council, and there was a picture there of a woman who'd been taken. The picture had been taken by an NSL employee who most people will know are used for parking, to issue parking fines. They're traffic wardens, and also they're using them as litter police. Private companies like NSL, it may not be NSL in your area, but they are one of the companies used. And what they do, they get these people who are dressed up a bit like traffic wardens, and they're called civil enforcement officers. And civil enforcement officers were actually traffic wardens about 15 years ago. All of a sudden, traffic wardens became civil enforcement officers. The reason for this was that they were going to be given powers not just to issue parking tickets, but due to do with things like court fines. So when you actually look into this, which we did, this was about 10 years ago, you'll find that NSL, these private companies, call themselves civil enforcement officers. Remember, these aren't police. These are employees of corporations who work on targets. They were going to be called civil enforcement officers, and civil enforcement officers could be used by the court in certain instances, including, I think, under the Magistrates Act, where they can kick your door in. I kid you not. This is where it all ties in with private bailiff companies, and things start to get very confusing, because private bailiff companies are private bailiff companies. They say they're appointed by the court. Often they're not. The fines that are issued and the summonses you get from your local council, as we know, are all printed in-house. They hire the court for the day. We know this stuff. We've been covering it a long time. We've done many things on this, and people have tried to take them to task for it and got nowhere, because the councils have an agreement with government and also with Majesty's Court Service to do this. However, in Halsbury's Laws of England, it clearly states that councils are not allowed to do this. You cannot have the prosecuting body and the client, basically, which is what they are. They're prosecuting you, and they're the judge and jury. You can't have that. Administrative courts, such as those administrative courts in that respect, are unlawful. It clearly states that in Halsbury's Laws of England, yet they're still doing it. Now, this goes on to the bigger picture of how they collect it, bailiffs, etc. You'll probably think, oh, he's talked about this before. The reason I'm talking about it is because something happened last week. We've had another victory, and it's all about councils being liable. Now, I'm just going to read out something from 2010 so people may get a little bit of a grasp on what's actually going on. It stated in 2010, I think this was from the Sunday Express, government officials hit back at accusations last week that they were encouraging councils to break the law and snoop on local residents, claiming instead that not only are they entitled to do so, but they are required to by law. Now, that's very interesting, because we're going to look at which laws they think that they use which require them to do that. And I don't think there are any laws that require them to do that. In fact, I know there are no laws that require them to do that, unless there's a third party involved, like the police. And they do partner with the police. We know that. We see it all over their vehicles. All councils in this country are partnered with the police, and of course, Crime Stoppers. They're all partnered together. And we talked last week about how Crime Stoppers were being funded basically by this partner company called ESRI to data map everything. Now, we all should know that we don't have any data protection in this country. The Data Protection Act is used to work against you. It works against the public in the respect that if you want to put in a Freedom of Information request, they can use the Data Protection Act to shut you down, and they do it all the time. So our data can be harvested. We can get 5G technology now, looking into our homes, data mapping everything, knowing our number plates, knowing where we are, knowing our habits, knowing what we're doing online, etc., etc., etc. And there's nothing we can do about it. But maybe there is. It carries on here anyway. A report in last week's Sunday Express pillories local councils for acting unlawfully and misusing the DVLA database to check up on residents suspected of offences. Wait a minute, that's the DVLA database. That's meant to be used for people who need to do ID checks, motor insurance checks, checks on taxation. Okay, local councils have access to the DVLA database, but they're not meant to be misusing it for checking up on residents suspected of offences, including horse fouling, littering, and owning out of control dogs that have nothing to do with motoring. So they're basically misusing the DVLA database. It's been admitted that they're doing that. And they're saying that they're required to by law, which goes into a big picture here, because they are acting beyond authority. Now, it carries on this thing. It says, as a result, they claim several councils have been banned from accessing the DVLA database. Now, this was a big story several years ago, but this is kind of old news. And in a way, it's very old-fashioned now, because we're into a totally different area. We're into the Internet of Things now. So let's get back to what we were going to talk about in respect of councils misusing their powers and Windows on the World intervening. We had a bit of a victory. So on Twitter last week, 'cause I follow Waltham Forest Council, there's a picture of a woman who looks rather bemused, and underneath it, it says, we would like to reconnect with this lady, stopped in Walthamstow High Street for environmental offences, aka dropping a cigarette end, okay? That's an environmental offence. We have a fine for her. Unfortunately, it seems she forgot her details when asked, which is perfectly lawfully entitled to do. A private company asks for your details, you don't have to give them. The police can demand your details, that's a different issue. We're not going to go into that though, because there's ways around that. But often it can involve sitting in a police station for a few hours, and people often don't want to do that sort of thing. However, it says, yeah, we have a fine for her. Unfortunately, it seems she forgot her details when asked. So if anyone can help us get in touch with her, please do let us know. wf.gov.uk/Grimebusters. Now, I went to Grimebusters, and it's the Waltham Forest website, which is all about envirocrime. And we do have our useful idiot who's in charge of envirocrime in Waltham Forest. We seem to mention him every week, so I won't mention Clyde Lokes this week, but he's in charge of envirocrime and he's cabinet member for the environment. So what I did, got in touch with the council and I wrote them a letter. And I gave it over to Claire Coghill, who's the leader of Waltham Forest Council. Apparently, well, according to other local residents, doesn't get back to you ever. I don't know whether she does get back to you ever, but I did phone her secretary up about the debate that went on at Leytonstone regarding 2 tower blocks that were going to be refurbished, and it was an ongoing thing that was all going to be planned, and we're going to get 50% affordable housing, and none of this was going to happen, basically. So I sent our show, which is called London's Dystopia, Public Winning Fight, back to her office. Her secretary said, yes, she's going to listen to it. I think she did, but that was pulled. So that's interesting. However, Miss Coghill did not respond to this letter. However, we did get a response from the Secretary of the CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Waltham Forest Council, Martin Eason. Now, I'll get to that in a minute. Let's go through the letter first. This is what I wrote to Waltham Forest Council. The reason I'm reading this out is because I want you to do it in your local area, because we've just had a very big result. Okay, dear Miss Cockhill, or Mr. Eason, it appears Waltham Forest Council is putting out photos of people who are alleged to have dropped litter. In this case, the person did not give their name, which is not an offence when dealing with a private contractor. I have spoken to Nick Dovey, who is solely responsible for uploading the image. He does not seem to think he needs public liability insurance, which is rather odd, as he is leaving himself wide open to legal action. There has been no court appearance and no evidence supplied, so this amounts to hearsay. The private companies employed to impose these fines are wearing body cameras for their protection. Can you tell me who authorises the private company to pass over images for publication by Waltham Forest Council? If the person is wanted for an offence, then any image should be uploaded only by the police, with a description of the offence and proportionality of the offence taken into consideration. This is of paramount importance to the public interest, which goes back to the Crime Stoppers thing. And we got all those pictures taken down of people that really weren't wanted in the respect that it was a public interest issue. It was more like invasion of privacy and prejudice. So it carries on. In this case, there has been no conviction in a court. I recently had 560 images removed from Crime Stoppers, who had allowed the police to abuse the site, uploading images of people which potentially biased trials and was creating criminals, potentially by making people go on the run after having been traumatised by being labelled as most wanted, which is effectively what they've done in this case. We proved they were not. Crime Stop has been hugely curtailed because of this. In this case, Waltham Forest appear to be acting beyond authority. Nick Dovey, who uploaded the picture, was not aware of legal obligations. If your legal department authorised this, can you please supply the name of the legally qualified person who was responsible? Mr. Dovey has already admitted full personal liability in this matter. Look forward to hearing from you. Now, we did not get a response to those questions. But what we did get was a one-line email from Lisa Scott, and she's Executive Business Support to the Chief Executive in Waltham Forest. And she said, "Thank you for your email addressed to Martin Eason, Chief Executive, the contents of which have been noted." Okay, so I wrote back and I said, "I will be covering the publishing of the picture of the lady who is alleged to have dropped litter or cigarette end on your Grimebusters page. Waltham Forest Council used to name and shame businesses who put their rubbish out on the wrong day. If you have any comment, please forward it and I will include it on the show. I will be stating that you are acting beyond the public interest and using threats and intimidation against the public who fund the massive amount of useful idiots in the new Stasi of Waltham Forest." No answer, unsurprisingly. But what was more interesting than anything was the actual response from the person who uploaded the photograph. Now, we've all dealt with these sort of people in the council, and we know what they're called. And at some point, Tony's going to play a jingle, which is really our way of making them know that we know what they are. So, first of all, Tony, can we have the phone call I made to Waltham Forest Council, who put me through to Nick Dovey, who was the officer responsible for uploading the picture?
Yep.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now, yes. Can I help you?
Yes, I hope so. I'm trying to find out who's responsible in Waltham Forest Council for a photograph that was put up of a woman, and it was on a site, Grimebusters. They've also tweeted it, and they're alleging that this woman is wanted for some kind of offence, and they say they want to give her a fine. And I wanted to know who was responsible for uploading the picture.
Okay, was it on a council poster then?
Yes, it's on Waltham Forest Council. It's on a Twitter feed, and it's also on Grimebusters. Now, I want to know who's responsible for doing this, because...
It'll probably be our communications team. I can put you through if you want to give me your name.
Yes, that's great. It's Mark here from Windows on the World.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just think it's fine. Let me find the number for you and I'll put you through.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello there. Hi. I'd like to know what was the person who uploaded a picture of a lady who was alleged to be wanted for a fine on a crime called Grimebusters, and it was also tweeted.
Certainly I can. That was me.
What, and who indemnifies you to upload pictures of people?
Well, people who give false information when caught up for littering offences have actually clearly, sort of committed an offence.
Okay, so are you legally qualified?
So as I said, we do have a team who go through this.
Okay, so
by the service.
Okay, so
and then we put it out there within the well. That is within. We are doing the rights to do that.
No, you're acting way beyond your authority. Fines can only be issued by a court, and this is an alleged offence. So what you've got is you've got a private company taking a photograph of somebody in the street, and you're printing it. You're not allowed to do that.
I mean, I think you probably want to go through the complaints process, which you can find on our website.
No, if you uploaded the picture, I need to know what your name is.
My name is Nick Dovey, Nickdovey, but as I say, you will need to go through the complaints process.
I won't be doing that. I'll be putting this out in the public domain because I've recently had the whole of Crime Stoppers taken down for very similar things to this, and you have no authority to be putting people's pictures up like that. You have no authority to do that. Who indemnifies you to do it? Who underwrites you to do that?
I mean, as I say, we have the officers go out, they shoot the lady...
That's not the issue. No, the issue is that you uploaded it.
And then our officers, she gave false information to officers, as I say. I think you need to go to...
You uploaded the picture, so you're liable. What am I saying to you is this, that your officers, do they work for NSL or a private company?
As I say, so I'm going to have to ask you to go to the proper...
No, I'm holding you accountable. Nick Dovey, I've got an extension for you because we'll be calling you.
As I say, you can reach us through the same...
You're a public official.
I'm going to have to end this call.
Oh, yeah, you're going to hang the phone up. Well, thanks for being on Windows on the World, Nick Dovey. Thank you very much.
Windows says...
Bye.
Watch out! There's a useful idiot about.
Oh, those Russians.
It's the Russians again, yes, but maybe we're the Russians, and we're going to get accused of being Russian bots, like that fella Andy56, who I've just subscribed to on Twitter. Now, that was very interesting, wasn't it, Tony? Because that guy goes into the standard procedure of the useful idiot. Well, we've issued a fine and we've decided to put the picture. Well, you've decided to do something doesn't mean you have legal authority to do it. Just because you think that you are sitting in an office, nice and safe, and you can put someone's picture up there, it's probably caused them enormous distress. These people are removed from reality, hiding away in offices. And basically, the reason I cut into him, because he kept going on and on and on about the same thing over and over again. He wasn't addressing the issue. He was failing to address the whole point of what he'd done. So that's what we're up against. These people, I mean, if someone had done that to him, can you imagine the whinging that would have gone on? He would have been whinging for weeks about that. His feelings had been hurt. He'd be getting compensation. He'd had to have stress, could be off work. You know what these people are like. I know exactly what that guy was like when he picked up the phone, because he didn't want to stand up for what he'd done. He used an excuse for what he'd done, and he didn't understand what he'd done. Putting people, shaming them like that, and on hearsay of a traffic warden. And traffic wardens, like from NSL, have already been caught lying and issuing fines, basically. They have to issue 10 parking tickets a day. And we all know that a lot of these parking tickets are totally uncalled for, if not unlawful, because a lot of them get turned over. So he's seen someone dropping a cigarette end, and Waltham Forest Council have decided to name and shame that person and put them out. Now, the good news is this. After I got that email back from that Lisa, Martin Easton's secretary, I think, CEO of Waltham Forest, it's gone. First, the Twitter feed went down, and then I checked Grimebusters, walthamforest.co.uk/Grimebusters, gone. Check it yourself. It's gone. It now says that quotes, oops, something's gone wrong. You're seeing this message because the page you're looking for can't be found. There you go. It's gone. They've pulled the whole thing. So that useful idiot in that office who acted beyond his own authority did not go through proper legal processes. he assumed that he had the authority to put somebody's picture up in public, accusing them of an offence, stating that they'd committed an offence when he didn't have the proof, and also assuming that he has the right of a government body such as the police. Only the police can do that. So he's now found out through his legal team that he wasn't supposed to do it. So at this point, I'll bring in Tony. Are you there, Tony?
Yeah, I'm here. Kremlin summed it up pretty well. He said, private company robot, and Daisy says, he's ducking responsibility. So, yeah, chat room seems to be able to work it out for themselves, unlike Nick Dovey.
Well, this is the thing, and they've all got that sort of hypnotic thing they do with the voice. Well, I don't know. Very similar to people who work for the CSA. Mostly, they're training them in some kind of low-level NLP. And I've had this before. They drone on at you, and what they're going to do is get you to go back through their internal complaints process. And we know where that goes. Nowhere, because it's not meant to go anywhere. I've already proved this with the CPS, proved it with the IOPC, which replaced the IPCC. I proved it with professional standards in the police. I proved it in the councils. You go higher. Now, the thing is that they've obviously had that checked out legally, because there's no way people with that amount of arrogance and contempt for the public who pay their wages, by the way, there's no way that they would have pulled that down for someone like me. They can't stand me there. The people on, ironically though, the people on the interface when you phone up the council number are quite interested. That lady, we carried on the conversation after that actually, and she said, "Oh, what's all this about?" I said, "Well, it's going on my show on Sunday, windowsontheworld.net." She goes, "Oh, I'll listen to that." So hopefully we've got people from Waltham Forest Council listening, and maybe we'll get more people sending us in useful idiots who we can phone up, because I do like phoning up these useful idiots. It's rather good fun, and we'll put them out. We'll name them and shame them, because that's what they think they can do that. You see, they're public officials. We can talk about them. He's a public officer. He's an officer. He's an officer within the council. He has public duties and liabilities. That's why I said, who underwrites you? Who indemnifies you to go around libeling people like that? Who does it? Is it the council? Is it your legal team? Well, we know now, don't we? Because they've taken it down.
Yes.
So
indeed.
there you go. It looks to get Tony. It's a bit like Crime Stoppers again. We've wiped out all the envirocrime in Waltham Forest with one phone call.
Yeah, you have. And there's a couple of comments here, relevant for right now, especially if there are people from the council listening. That would be handy, because they might not stay till the end. You know what they're like, they're busy people and all that. Everyone passes callers on to other people, like pass the parcel, and someone else comments, or a hot rock. And then Daisy says they can't handle people who know what they're talking about. They're used to pulling the wool over people's eyes, and that's exactly right. That's what I've said to my council. They rely on ignorance and, more importantly, nescience, the fact that you know nothing, in order to pull the wool over your eyes and do exactly what they want to you. And this is another great example, Mark, of what people can do. You're showing them the way. Everyone, you need to be getting on this. Look out what they're doing, and make a point of bringing these people to task, to holding them responsible for their actions.
Exactly. There's nothing more demoralising than going through their internal complaints process. There's absolutely no point either, because it's not going to go anywhere. The internal gatekeepers are just going to send you around in circles. So never go through their complaints process. Go higher. You have to go to the CEO, and you have to put things in a legal framework. Everybody can look up certain acts and basically things like libel, basically defamation and libel, and you can use the law against these people, and they are obviously acting way beyond their authority and clearly way beyond their legal obligation, if you like, because they seem to think that they've got an obligation. But listen to this. This is from 2006. The government is considering selling off detailed information about people's homes gathered by council tax inspectors. Officials have discussed plans to sell details about the size and condition of households, the number of bedrooms and parking places, and even whether they contain more than one bath to insurance and mortgage companies. The government has also discussed allowing the public access to their neighbours' records. The plan will cause outrage among homeowners and liberty groups already angry at government plans for new council tax valuation system, blah-de-blah. The plan was last night blasted by the Tories, who said the government was forcing people to reveal personal information and profiting from it. Shadow government minister said this is just the latest disturbing development in the government's plans for council tax inspections. We've maintained from the start that the collection of such detailed information would create a significant temptation to sell it off. Well, he was right there. Okay, so this is from ages ago. So this has been coming for a very long time. And we've covered it for years. These people who follow people around until they drop a cigarette or until their dog poops, basically. So you've got everyone has to carry this. Fair enough. I mean, you know, everyone has to carry around plastic bags in case the dog poops on something, right? That's that in a way that, yeah, that's fair enough. But this thing about following people around till they drop a cigarette end, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I was in the Crown Court about a year ago and everyone's come out for a cigarette. They're outside. I don't smoke, but I don't mind if people do. And they've got these litter police were hanging around them. It's like they've come out of a court and all the legal people and the people on the jury have come out for a cigarette and they're just being followed around by these people. So there's no escape, absolutely no escape. And it's incredible, really. What's this one here? This one I've just found, which is about the dog poo police. And we did cover that, actually, when I was at People's Voice. We covered that it was in Newham and this woman was walking their dog. And Snooper came along and said, "Your dog's done that over there." She said, "No, that wasn't my dog," right? That wasn't my dog. And he followed around and he was going to call the police, and he did call the police. And in the end, she says, "Look, I'll go and pick it up," but it wasn't her dog that had done it. It's just insane because they have those civil enforcement officers everywhere now, and they dress them like the police. That's the weird thing about it. They're called civil enforcement officer, and they dress them up like the police. And these people who've been appointed by the council, these private companies, they employ people who assume they are the police. It says here, a town hall spy on every corner, pursuing smokers, stalking dog owners, 9,600 missions of council snoopers, surveillance operations exploiting controversial anti-terror laws, offences such as dogfouling and dropping litter are being targeted. Council officers carried out test purchases at local escort agencies. What? Now that one, I don't know if we've got time to go into that, but that sounds very bizarre. Hidden cameras used to catch people putting rubbish out early. Now, they did this in Waltham Forest, and they had their local news rag, which ironically, when I contacted them about this, they said the editor's on sick leave. Right? So they didn't want to respond to that letter I sent. But they used to have an article in there called Named and Shamed, and it was about people who put their bin bags out on the wrong date, usually businesses, and businesses who put the wrong sign in their window. So they were naming and shaming these. Yeah, so it says town halls have launched an astonishing 9,600 spying missions on the public in the past 3 years. Now, this was years ago, right? This is 2012. The surveillance operations exploit anti-terror laws, but many are targeting minor offences, such as flouting the smoking ban, dogfouling and dropping litter. Council officers have also gone undercover to carry out test purchases at local escort agencies. In other cases, tactics included obtaining phone records and trapping households, putting out rubbish early by using motion-activated cameras on lampposts and inside tin cans. Families suspected of cheating school catchment area rules have been followed by council spies. So it's quite incredible. Some 26 local authorities have used Reaper to spy on dog owners to see whose animals were responsible for dog fouling. A further 7 abused their powers to investigate suspected breaches of the smoking ban. Yes, Suffolk County Council conducted a test purchase of dating agency services. Stockton Borough Council mounted an operation to check on the proper movement of pigs and to investigate a fraudulent escort agency. No action was taken. Well, that's typical of the council, though, with something like that, isn't it? No action was taken. They just want to get a quick fine off you. But that goes to show that since last week, when we're talking about this, we've had another minor victory. So I'm going to bring in Chris here because he keeps us up to date with what's going on in Hertford, which is a massive regeneration hub, a bit like most of London. Are you there, Chris?
Oh, Mark, I couldn't get over that phone call. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Well, it is and it isn't, because the thing is with him, I knew what he was going to do. He wasn't going to let me get a word in edgeways, so I just had to interrupt him because he wasn't going to listen. He thought he knew it all. Now, he's found out since that he doesn't know it all. But I don't think that's going to stop him in future. It's like a major problem, this, because the useful idiots that they put into these positions, they're all trained in the same way, and they're trained to undermine you. They're trained in basic psychological subversion techniques, so we do need to be armed against them. Remember, this is a communist takeover, and I always refer to my local council as the leader as our glorious leader, and I always refer to the cabinet member for the environment as Comrade Lokes. Now, I finish off every letter with those, which is the follow-up letters. I keep the original ones quite serious with the allegations in, and then I put in that at the end, because, as you say, Chris, the best way to deal with these people is through humour, and you're going to be getting your show up and running soon, aren't you?
Well, I hope to, yes. Trouble is, I've had a dodgy arm this week, a sort of I don't know what's happened to it. I've been in absolute agony. I was hoping to get going last Wednesday, but unfortunately that's been put off for about a week. But what I was going to say, Mark, is that, we've got to have a name for these people. And I think Yuri Bezmenov came up with a good one, which is woolly-headed, half-baked intellectuals. But that's a bit long, but why can't we call them wabbies? So you go to the council and you speak to a wabbie, because they seem to sort of come from a production line, don't they? And I'm looking in the communist magazine what we have in Hertfordshire called Horizons. And our glorious leader, we've got a problem, because there's a nice picture of him on page 4, but there's only one slight problem. Who is he? Because there's nothing about who he is. It's got leaders column. So, I mean, how can we put that on the wall and worship our gracious leader if we don't know who our gracious leader is? So, we've got to find out who he is. And the other thing is, apparently, we're told that our population in Hertfordshire continues to grow because people are living longer and more people are choosing to live and work here. Wow, isn't that amazing? And because of that, they're starting a property company called Hearts Living Limited. Really, isn't that amazing, considering that the Office of National Statistics shows that there's 1 million empty houses, and there's enough empty houses for every homeless person to have the choice of 6 homes to live in.
Well, recently, Chris, empty houses have gone up 20% in the last 18 months or 2 years, I think. I saw that in a newspaper the other day. So the whole thing is ironic. In other words, the cost of housing is through the roof. Homelessness is at a very, very high level now. I don't know whether it's the highest it's ever been, but I suspect it is. And of course, the councils are brushing them all away. It's a bit like Soil and Green. They're bringing in the scoops to get rid of people. I think that's a big part of it. And of course, they're socially cleansing people out of London. And those people are being put off into fairly remote areas in the respect that they're being divided up so they can't get together and do anything about it. However, we have had some good results with that and things like going on in the Aylesbury estate. I've got some news items going to bring in soon, but what's happening up your way, Chris? What's happening at the moment?
Well, at the moment, we've got the local elections, and you've got the usual leaflets that come through the door, which tell you completely utterly nothing. And apparently all our local councillors want to give us a voice. Isn't that nice? So that's nice to know that we're going to have a voice. And one of the political parties, I won't say which one, said about the Citizens Advice Bureau. And they didn't realise that the local Citizens Advice Bureau is a limited company. So I sent them an email, this person. I said, "Do you realise it's a limited company?" And the reply I got back was, "Well, I'm going to speak to the people that work for the Citizens Advice Bureau." I said, "No, I can prove it." I sent another email. I've gone onto the company's house. Here's the registration number. And here is one of the directors who happens to be a councillor. And here is all the details. I haven't heard anything since. Wonder why. So I think she's dropped a clanger on that one. But I've said before that they're going to introduce this 20 mile an hour zone right away from Waltham Cross to North Hoddesdon, which is about 9 miles. And they're talking about what these leaflets I've got through the post for this local election is, or council's election rather, is saying that they're going to try and help small business and enterprise. Well, that's going to kill it, isn't it? Because who the hell is going to go to the small shops in this 20 mile an hour zone when it's going to be gridlock? And I think it's killed it in Waltham Forest.
Well, this is what's happening. Well, it has, and they're constantly going on about that, because now what you've got to do, if you want to park there, you've got to phone the council up and give them your registration, which is another thing, because obviously that ties in then with more data gathering. But so before you park anywhere, you've got to tap in your registration number and all the rest of it. If you just want to, what if you want to go and get a sandwich or something? I mean, it's just ridiculous. And the people were campaigning. They want half an hour parking by the shops or 15 minutes. There was a hustings in Waltham Forest last week, and I watched about 20 minutes of it. There were people from different parties, and there was a local group who were very good, and the woman laid it out perfectly, and they went on about the parking. It seems to be these two factions, Chris. There's those that drive and those what don't, and those what don't understand how things get to shops, because they think everything gets there on the back of a bike, apparently. Because when you look at what they're saying, there's certain groups, like say the Green Party, and the Cabinet Member for the Environment got up, and several others, and they didn't mention cars at all. So they're leaving cars out of the equation, and they're just saying walk and cycle. Well, that's okay, but where does everything come from? It's a kind of ridiculous thing, really. It's like cognitive dissonance or something's happened to them, because how can you completely ignore the fact that everything comes in by road? I mean, we haven't got railways going to the back of department stores to unload things, have we? So I don't get it. And then all the little shops and all the traders all come in by car. So how can you have people who factored that out of the equation? It kind of doesn't make sense at all. But there seems to be these two factions. Yeah, there's people who are ignoring cars completely, and people who are saying, well, we need somewhere to park, and we want to go to the shops, and we might want to drop our kids off. You know, is that something that you're aware of?
Oh, yeah. They seem to live, you're quite right, it is a cognitive dissonance. They're in a kind of, I call it Goldilocks syndrome, because in architecture, you know, if there is a terrible design which is going to cause social problems, you point it out to one of these characters, I call them wabbies now, and they go, oh, don't be silly, it's a community, that won't happen. And they sort of go into this cloud cuckoo land world.
Well, it's an interesting word, community, because community sort of means whatever people want it to mean. In other words, if it's in their interest, it's their community. I've heard this a lot, because I thought when they said community, it meant everyone who lived there, but it doesn't. It means your particular political identity group. That's what a community now means. It means people who identify with your politics, your worldview. That's what your community is. So when they say our community, they mean their particular community. They don't mean everybody. They mean a very small section of people who agree with them.
Oh yes, that's spot on. But I mean, I've been in countless meetings with what I call people with Goldilocks syndrome, and you literally cannot get through to them. You might as well speak to a pig in a pigsty, you know.
Well, that's why I think it's worth going above them, you see. I mean, I don't think there is any point speaking to them because they're there because of that reason. They're there because they repeat what they've been told and are unable to question it. And they've got their noses in the trough. It's very simple how this works, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't matter what organisation it is, and we have gone on about this quite a lot, so I don't think we need to address that again. But as far as the local officials being involved, again, noses in the trough, and being directors of companies, that's quite a serious issue, really, isn't it? And you've actually mentioned it before, but you were talking about something earlier on tonight with this company that has... Is it a councillor who's director?
Oh, yes.
Remind me of that.
Well, okay. What it is, Borough of Broxton, which is where the comrades, the communist system that I live under, they've started a company called Badger BC Investments Limited. And it's the local councils, I think, is their best kept secret because you mention it to people, they never heard of it. And I looked it up, and you can look it up on in Companies House, and you can also use Dun & Bradstreet, and you'll find out the company registration number. They've also got a website where you can actually find out what their portfolio is, etc., etc. And when you look down the list of directors, you'll see a councillor here and a councillor there, and you think that's interesting. Then you go on to the local council's list of councillors, and they should have an area where they show you their outside interests or any, I can't think of the official word, Mark, what was it now?
Conflict of interest.
That's the word I was looking for, thanks. And strangely enough, it's missing from there. Now, isn't that strange? Now, this opens up a can of worms, in my view. I know an ex-councillor, I think you know the same person, in Kent, and I asked her, I said, well, is there anything wrong here? And she said, well, if it's within the council, then they don't need to mention it. But if it's outside the council, then they do. So does that mean this limited company, if it's inside the council and it's going to be a profit-making company, the way I see it, I could be wrong, surely he should mention it, or has he just simply forgotten it? Isn't it odd?
Yes, I was going to bring something up here. Which has been sent to me. It says, council to spend £50,000 on mural in council leaders' ward. And this is in Croydon, by the way. Labour-run Croydon Council struggling to make ends meet as the Tory government continues to cut its annual grant. Yesterday announced that it is to spend £50,000 to fund an art installation under a railway bridge in South Norwood. Now, it's got a picture of it here. Basically, it's got these old Victorian columns which look actually really attractive. All right, it's got a railway bridge above it, but they could paint the columns and paint the wall. Okay, that's what needs to do. You need to paint the columns and paint the wall. Job done. However, it said the scheme is to be backed by the self-proclaimed community group People for Portland Road. Now, I looked up People for Portland Road's website, and it says do not go any further. Basically, it's got one of those warnings on it that you're going to your details may be phished and all this kind of stuff, right? So they haven't got a website there that you can go to. It says the announcement of this extravagant expenditure on art washing was made 2 weeks to the day before the local elections on May the 3rd. The railway bridge happens to be in the Woodside ward, in which one of the councillors is Tony Newman, the leader of Croydon Council. Newman's fellow Woodside ward councillor is Paul Scott. Scott is the chair of the council's planning committee. Scott, an architect by profession, is also the founder and only chair of People for Portland Road. The announcement of a competition, you see, this is to win. It's going to be won, you see, Chris. It's all about winning. You know, we're in it to win it, but we've already won it. But we don't tell them that. We know who's won. I suppose it's a bit like the MBEs and all that. They know who's going to get one, but they don't tell the public until the day. the £50,000 task of adorning the walkway, it says 50,000 alongside Portland Road, was made in the Architect's Journal. The report on the website of the must-read magazine of the architecture profession stated the team chosen for the commission will transform the dark, damp and unwelcoming railway bridge and underpass into a much brighter and more inviting place by creating an artwork which incorporates an existing 1980s mural. Wait a minute, so it's already there. The project, backed by local pressure group, People for Portland Road, is part of wider plans to regenerate the historic suburb, which has suffered a prolonged period of economic decline. Right, so basically, you've got a conflict of interest there. And the thing is that this is quite a lot of money. And you're looking at underneath the railway bridge, which just needs a lick of paint, basically. So this is the same thing. And this is another thing I was going to bring up with you, Chris, about winning. Has Hertford Council won anything lately? Broxbourne. It's Broxbourne where you are, isn't it? Has it been announced that anything's been won recently?
Oh no, well, they're winning everything. What it was is that we've got this. What they have won is when they had the Olympics. They're supposed to be. This is in Waltham Abbey. They had this. What do you call it? Where they went down on the canoes. It looked like an open sewer. And what they did is they removed a beautiful roundabout and replaced it with something that looks like a Kazi after a nuclear attack. And it's another Wabby art. So, and they said, we've won this, this marvellous mural or whatever you call it. But, it's all full of winning. I mean, that when you look through this magazine, but the thing I'd like to win, it's a small competition, which I think our listeners could go into, is guess who the council leader is? Because I don't know who he is, because you said you should complain to the top man. We can't, because we don't know who he is. It's a picture of him, but we don't know who, because there's no name there.
So you can't name and shame him either.
No, it's a picture. He looks a bit like a glove puppet, a bald-headed glove puppet.
Well, why don't you do what Waltham Forest Councils did? Put his picture up, say, can you identify this man? We'd like to identify him as he's allegedly the leader of the council, and we want to find out if he's impersonating the leader of the council, just like they did. Yeah.
Well, here I noticed also with these magazines, they seem to be harping on about people with learning difficulties winning trophies. And they seem to be obsessed with young people's awards. And when you look into these awards, they're awards for, putting it bluntly, sod all.
I've just got that. In actual fact, Chris,
yeah,
I was looking at something which ties in exactly to that. What they seem to be doing is appointing children. Right, yeah. This is interesting stuff, because what they're doing is, it says Young Citizens of the Year. So what this is, the annual Love Your Borough Awards, Love Your Borough Awards, because they that Waltham Forest was awarded the Borough of Culture, but they kind of awarded it to themselves, a bit like the cycling awards they gave to themselves when Mini Holland came in. So the annual Love Your Borough Awards give the council the opportunity to give well-deserved recognition and say thank you to those community members who have helped us make life here even better, whether for one person or for us all. We thank those who have nominated and brought these good acts to our attention, and we thank our sponsors whose contributions make it possible to stage the Love Your Borough Award. So who are the sponsors? Oh, would that be the council taxpayers who are paying for it? I think that they might be the main sponsors here. And without placing a burden on council taxpayers, oh yeah, right, we share some of the stories and the award winners with you here. It's got a picture, right? So they're all in there around the tables in the assembly hall. Young Citizen of the Year. So joint winners. So there's all these kids, since starting a media studies A-level. So media studies, that's going to be a great qualification. It's perfect for somebody who wants to talk to the council, though, isn't it? Because media studies is about basically watching television, I think. So it's discovered a passion for filmmaking. Well, what are you doing a media studies course for if you've got a passion for filmmaking? Make films. What's media studies got with filmmaking? Nothing. Making films is a practical, hands-on talent that you have to learn. It's got nothing to do with watching television or media studies. She designed the programme for the East 17 Films International Film Festival. Was invited to film and edit a short documentary on the unveiling of the blue plaque heritage sites of 2 silent film studios in Wood Street, interviewing top directors, actors and local councils. Well, I made a film about Walthamstow years ago, and it's actually on their Wikipedia page, and they've probably taken it off now, though. because they're not too kindly disposed towards me. But I am here to help them. This is the point. But yeah, that ties in with what you're saying, Chris. So they get a load of kids who they can brainwash and aren't going to really say much, and they give them awards. I suppose that's a good idea, you know, keep it. This is how Soviet brainwashing works, though. You get them while they're young. That's the point. For the new form of communism, you need to get them from the cradle.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
You've got to get them really at a very, very young age. And some of those people there were much younger than that. They were little kids. So basically, yeah, that's it. Yeah, let's appoint little kids and mentor them. And they're not going to have anything to say. And we can give them something to do, and they'll do it. Very good. Exactly. So, yeah, that's incredible stuff, really. I mean, it just blows my mind when I look at these council websites, you know, and what they put on them. There you go. We've had one taken down this week. Tony, have you got anything to add at this point?
Well, there's a few comments from the chat. I think now would be a good time to get on to them.
Yeah.
Let me get my document over. We've got Mithrin going way back. Is this not common purpose motto, leading beyond authority?
Yes, it is one. It's one of the things that they say, but it's not actually just limited to them, I don't think, 'cause we've covered this a lot. And if you go into the change agent organisations where these people have been trained as social entrepreneurs, look at that social entrepreneurs on the internet. Do a bit of research. We did an article a couple of years ago, Big Society Change Agents. We've really updated all that stuff now, but that's a good basis for it. And these people are being trained for these jobs. And yeah, they're known as social entrepreneurs, and they promote community interest companies. Now, not all community interest companies are bad. They're not at all. So, but there's a certain structure that all this works inside, and that's a big part of it. So basically, they're controlling everything. That's why if we went to get some funding from the council, it's very unlikely that we'd get a chance to do it now. Previously, you may have had a chance if you knew someone in the council, and that's how it's always worked. But now, it's sewn up, and they are much more tightly controlled, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Daisy, new in our chat room. Hiya, Daisy. Welcome to Windows Underworld chat. I know my niece has turned from a lovely girl into a raving cultural Marxist. The cliches are so predictable.
Yeah, a lot of people say this about their kids, you know. I hear this all the time, and when I talk about kids, I'm talking about people in their 20s, even up to their 30s now. So, you know, obviously, we're all getting on a bit now. But the point is this, that yes, there's been brainwashing of a few generations now, and it's quite scary. And the ability to think outside the box is being severely curtailed. However, they can't make everybody think inside the box. It's impossible. And once people wake up and start looking at things, there's always going to be the drones who the council and these organisations are going to use, or even the BBC. There's always going to be those people. But the point is that anyone with a brain cell who starts seeing outside it can't stand to be in that paradigm anymore. And it's a huge problem for people because their employment possibilities tend to disappear. And that's the problem.
Yep.
Once they step out of these things, it's much more difficult to get a job, you know.
Yeah, we're all ruled by fear. Even those people there in those positions dishing it out, they're still ruled by it.
Yeah.
Kremlin says... Are you done? Sorry.
Only, yeah.
Right, Kremlin says, and we're going back to the Nick Dovey phone call, NLP and don't and won't deviate from anyone who brings up any kind of comeback, trained to only do a job. If you question it with training, you are out. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly why I reacted that way. In actual fact, I usually stay a lot calmer, but I knew what he was trying to do, and I thought, how arrogant can you get, you know? I mean, when I saw that picture, I was really shocked, and I felt sorry for the person whose picture was up, because obviously, I think it's an East European woman, right? But the point is that if you see that and it's all over the internet, how are you going to feel about it? You've dropped a cigarette end and all of a sudden you're the most wanted criminal in the borough. It's pathetic. And he's pathetic for even considering that should be done.
Yeah, I think earlier you said that they see it as their duty, where it seems to me it's more like a petty little case of, I will get you because I can sort of scenario is the way I see it. But I don't really know because I don't know the fella and I weren't there. But Daisy says complaints process equals stonewalling collective. Are you listening, councils?
Well, that's what they do. I mean, we've been through that, yeah. Don't go through the internal complaints process. Go higher and make a complaint. You see, there's different types of complaints. It's like if you complain to the police, you go to the IOPC, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, which is actually replacing the Independent Police Complaints Commission. Now, the Complaints Commission sounds like it's real, doesn't it? Even though we knew it wasn't. So they replaced it with something even more toothless. The Independent Office of Police Conduct. Now, the word complaint has been taken out, you see. So that's the thing. But you have to hit them with their liabilities. And that's the only way that I've ever had any success with this. What you have to do is you have to punch quite high with them because as I say, they'll keep you going around in circles and their arrogance is off the charts. And they'll just send you back these pathetic letters. And I've been trying to deal with the police for a couple of years with this. And I think my case has been completely shut down. It's like your friend was saying the other night, our friend in the chat box probably tonight, said it's been stonewalled. I think it has. I think it closed ranks. But the closing ranks is done in all these organisations. So you have to find a way of getting beyond that. And the way to get beyond it is you get them into their legal obligations. And that's how I got the council into court, just through a petty thing of where they took me 25% discount away. We were talking about that last week. And that was quite an important case because it meant that nobody had to fill that form in ever again. And somebody sent me some really good stuff about all that, which I want to get into in part 2, because this, in a way, was a preamble. But, our preambles can be quite long because there's a lot to say. However, it's getting up to the hour now, Tony. Are we going to have a little break, or do you want to carry on?
Yeah, we'll have a break now. We'll get to this later. There's some bits here, but a lot of it's just going back over what we've said. So this one's from our friend Unique Lee. You can find him on minds.com. It's called New World Order. We'll be back in about 8 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Welcome to condition. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinised.
14.
No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinised.
14.
No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinised. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinised as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm, multiply in a drop of water. On other planets, we were being scrutinised. We were being scrutinised. Possibility of life on other planets. We were being scrutinised. And human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinised as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm, multiply in a drop of water. And slowly, surely, in his eyes, as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm, multiply in a drop of water.
Magic 7.
Slowly.
How we can get this down to 0?
During the last years of the 19th century, human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. In his eyes,
Magic 7.
we were being scrutinized. We were being scrutinized. We were being scrutinized. We were being scrutinized. Slowly and surely.
Falling all the way to 0.
Slowly, in his eyes, they drew their plans against us.
We will build a more sustainable global order, create a new world order.
get this down to zero.
No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized. Enemies are someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply.
Make changes.
Slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Zero. Make changes that will bring that down to zero. Fall all the way to zero. How we can get this down to zero.
Possibility of life. They drew their plans against us. No one could have dreamed that we were being scrutinized in his eyes. In the last years of the 19th century, we were being scrutinized in his eyes.
New World Order.
Regarded as certain.
Make changes that will bring that down to zero.
No one could have dreamed that we were being scrutinized in his eyes. In the last years of the 19th century, we were being scrutinized in his eyes.
The World Order.
Cadillac 55. I'm gonna take you to the Bellhead Jive. I'm gonna rock with Rita Flack. Try to the bugging in a sack. With my radio on, a rockabilly song. Wanna see my baby? She's a real, real gone. Got a red car. Gotta go, old car. Got a real red car. Gotta go, old car. Got a red car. Gotta go, old car. Gonna drive down to the dock when it's time to really rock. Come on, Nancy Lee, a boogie woogie with me. With my radio on, a rockabilly song. Wanna see my baby? She's a real, real gone. Got a red car. Gotta go, old car. Got a real red car. Gotta go, old car. Got a red car. Gotta go, old car. Gonna drive down to the dock when it's time to really rock. Come on, Nancy Lee, a boogie woogie with me. With my radio on, a rockabilly song. Wanna see my baby?
Yeah.
She's a real, real
Say something to me.
red car. Gotta go, old car. Got a real red car. Gotta go, old car. Got a red car. Gotta go, old car. track, a house with a neon sign, and them Cajun Queen for the Cajun dream. Gonna give you some of the time without a Smiley Jack, without a Smiley Jack, without a Smiley Jack. Have a good time. And the colour go go, the colour go go, the colour go go, the colour go go. Smiley Jacks, without a Smiley Jack, without a Smiley Jacks. Have a good time. Son rode into town, slow and coolly. He had come to kill Big Bill Dooley. Dooley eyed him cautiously, said, "Say man, don't pick no fight with me. Come on, Smiley Jacks, read on a Smiley Jacks, read on a Smiley Jacks. Have a good time." And the colour go go, the colour go go, the colour go go, the colour go go. Smiley Jacks, we're on a Smiley Jacks, we're on a Smiley Jack. Have a good time.
Welcome back to Windows on the World. We're going to be joined by Piers Corbyn in part 2, and of course we've still got Chris on the line from Hertford, and we've been talking about local authorities acting beyond their authority. Now, we talked about this data and surveillance, and last week we were really going into this company called ESRI, which had partnered with Crime Stoppers, and it was about this bigger picture of data mining. And this, a lot of stuff I've been sent. By the way, Piers, I can hear is you breathing, so if you could get away from the phone, that'd be great.
All right, okie doke.
And we'll call you in. So yeah, it was someone said that they'd had a store car from Debenhams, and then the next thing is they've got capita tracing services asking about a pension they don't have. I'm getting a lot of background noise, so you can just keep away from the microphone. That'll be great. Okay, so I'm getting a message here from Tony. So can you hear me, Tony? Am I okay here?
Yeah, I can hear you sounding good. We're broadcasting, but Chris isn't in the call yet.
Okay, fantastic. So this is quite interesting because Equifax, right, this is from their website. It said, our understanding of the public sector has been gained through working directly with government agencies, central government and law enforcement, combined with our consultative and proactive approach to creating and integrating the best solutions for our clients, means we are well placed to be preferred suppliers of insights to the public sector. Equifax Public Gateway can be used in many instances, including but not limited to welfare benefits, tax credits, local services, assets and debt recovery and evidence using Equifax. Am I still on, Tony?
Yeah, you're fine.
That's right. if people who are on the call can stop tapping into the chat box on Skype, because I'm just getting loads of noises coming through. Okay. Using Equifax Public Sector Gateway has already created a 10% uplift in the number. Yeah, okay. Can people stop sending messages on Skype? I'm just getting loads of noises coming up every time you do it. Cheers. Using Equifax Public Sector Gateway has already created a 10% uplift in the number of people we can trace for collections. It's an essential part of the jigsaw in helping us to overachieve on our results. Now, here we go. Leading beyond authority, overachievement. So this is where it all ties together. And the private companies who are involved in this, like Equifax and Capita, are basically data mining everything. For instance, I have a bank account and I used a private address for it. Now, no other company uses that address, but my bank account is the only thing that's connected with me at that address. Next thing, I got Capita onto me about some alleged council tax debt, but they never passed it on. So this is way beyond what people think. And once they start data mapping your house, well, what could possibly go wrong? And we're looking at basically, this is Capita, Local Public Services Director said, the collection rates for council tax and business rates are the best they have ever been since we began working with Bexley. One of the reasons for this is that we are offering residents more choice and ease when it comes to paying their bills. Not only is it more convenient for residents and business owners in Bexley to do more online, but it also saves both taxpayers and the council time and money. So basically, yeah, they're trying to get everyone to pay online. And this brings up another question, which Tony has had a problem with recently. Is it something you want to talk about, Tony, before we bring in Piers?
Well, I think we'd probably do something about it when we go through that call together. I think we could do quite a bit on that, to be honest. But it's, it's there in black and white from the horse's mouth again, isn't it? That they're not working for us. You heard it earlier. I've been meaning to dig that off my server for over a year, I think, because that's not this year's. That's something from last year or maybe the year before. I'm not sure.
But it brought up a very important point, because what that woman was saying was because you had failed, which is a word I like using against them, you have failed to respond. They said, well, you failed to keep up your payments, so they've your right to pay by instalments. Now, this is a really important point that I wanted to bring up anyway, because they can't do that. Council tax is calculated on a daily basis. So if you go to court for it, however much they say you owe, you only ever owe up until that day, because it's calculated on a daily basis. So if you go to court and they say that you've lost your right to pay by instalments, there is no right either way to pay by instalments. It's an assumption on their part that they can breach their contract with you, which is what they're doing. Because your contract with them is you pay council tax up to the point where you owe it, which is to that day. You don't pay a whole year in advance. And you can go to court and you can prove that in court. It's a bit of a pain going to the magistrates, but that woman on your phone call, Tony, was completely and utterly wrong. When they say that we've taken away your right, no, you have a right only and an obligation only to pay council tax up until the day when they demand it, which is the day we're in now, which is up until today.
Yeah.
So they can never do that. They can't demand payment up front, and it's against the bills of exchange. It's against everything else. They're sending you an invoice for services you haven't already had.
Yep, I get it. Aylesbury's law as well. I've got it now. I'm ready for them this year because I'm about to go through the same thing again.
Well, in actual fact, our mutual friend Joanne had a problem with that, and I put a letter together, and it's in one of those council tax things on the site. If you look at our section on council tax, you'll find it in there. And please don't use a template letter, because they get used to them. Tailor it to your own use and slightly alter it a bit, because what they do is they say, oh, you got this off of the internet. I mean, this is incredible, right? These debt collection companies goes, you got it off the internet. everything's on the internet. Well, why wouldn't you get it off the internet? Do you know what I mean? So law books that are on the internet are different than the law books in libraries. Have they got stuff on the internet that's not real and everything in the library is real? Or are they the same book? Because I thought they were meant to be the same book. So Halsbury's Laws of England, if you're carrying around a huge volume of Halsbury's Laws, is that different than what's online? Because I don't think it is. You know, so any law that's online doesn't account, you know. So in other words, if something's online, then it's not real. Okay, well, let's use that against them as well.
Yeah, I had it from Lovells when I used the free letter process about getting on 6 years ago now from get out of debt free. Before I knew what I know now, I don't do it this way now. But at that time, Lovells came back with, you've used an internet template. And I said, well, fair enough, but everything on it's correct. I understand what it means and I stand by what it says. And that was the last I heard from them.
Yes. Well, it will be, because, again, it was like going back to the beginning of the show, Tony. When I wrote that letter, it was to put them on the spot. And when I asked who indemnified that guy to make an assumption that he could put private information that they'd got from a corporation onto a public website without any evidence, making an accusation against somebody, he thought that was okay. But he's now found out that it's not okay, because it's all been taken down. So this is it. You can't rely on these people to give you anything like reasonable information, because one, they're not legally qualified, and two, they don't know anyway. They've not been told. They don't know the law. They know what to repeat.
Yeah,
but the point is,
they put themselves in a very, very vulnerable situation, as well, as you pointed out earlier, by doing all of this, by giving out legal advice to people when they're not legally trained. You know, if you're recording them calls, this is why they don't want you to record calls. But you can legally record a call if it's for legal purposes to anyone. That's the end of that story.
Yeah.
Don't let them tell you that you can't. But they don't want you to
often
record them.
calls anyway.
They always record them for that, because they want to protect themselves legally. But they don't want you to protect yourself legally. Most of them will put the phone down if you tell them that you're recording them. They won't have no more of it.
Well, that's right. That's what Kent Police did. So, and she said, so this call's been recorded, is it? I said, all calls are recorded. And I ignored what she said and carried on. She didn't put the phone down. That was that last time I spoke to Kent Legal Services, before we found out that the assistant to the chief constable had flat out lied. And when I went to the what is it called? The PCC, which is basically a civilian who looks after the police constable. It checks them out. Well, they said that it was an abusive process, because somebody else had written back on behalf of the chief constable, but the chief constable never responds to you, so it makes that organisation totally pointless. Yeah, the crime commissioner, it makes it pointless because the chief constable will not answer you and only his assistant will. It means it has to go back into the professional standards of the police force where it came from, which is the gatekeepers. So I said, you're going to give it back to the people who've already lied to me. So we've caught someone lying on behalf of the chief constable. The chief constable has failed to respond at all times to the important information I've put in front of him, and you're now saying that it has to go back through their internal complaints process, you know, and that's what they do. So again, you have to go higher.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat room there from Mithrin. He says, can we go to the council and pay them daily in pennies? The answer to that is clearly no. No, they won't accept payment off you in the council. They only accept payment in certain ways now, or remote one anyway.
Yes, but also they're not allowed to refuse payment. This is the strange thing about it, that if you pay a certain amount into a council tax account, say you owe 800 quid, and they're going to take you to court, and you put 40 quid in, they have to issue a new bill. They don't always do it, but when it does go to court, they get caught out because they haven't got the right amount in front of them. And you say, no, I've tried to remedy this. They've ignored it with their computer-generated summons, and they're fake court case, and they're wasting the time of the Crown. And that's what you say when you go into court. They're wasting the time of you, sir, who's the magistrate, and they're wasting the time of the Crown. And they'll go, yes, I've been hearing this all day long. And they don't like it. No, they don't like it. If you've got a legally qualified magistrate there, they are actually on your side because they don't like the council. The council have to hire these people, but it doesn't mean they're going to necessarily be on the council's side. And that's a very important point, I think. However, we have Mr. Corbyn out there.
Hello.
Hello. So, are you still there as well, Chris?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right, Chris. Yeah, well, sorry about that. I was getting a few noises. Every time somebody puts a message into the Skype, it's like a huge distraction noise that comes into the headphones. So that's why I was getting a little bit confused at the beginning there. But I'm glad you're both there. Piers, yes.
Yes.
You've got some stuff to say now. We know about the controversy recently with Mark Wadsworth being kicked out of the Labour Party over this trifling matter. I don't know whether you want to comment on that, but we now know what an awful situation that is, that these people are now really making fools of themselves. So I don't know whether there's anything you want to add about that.
Well, I think that's a fair comment. You see, the opposition to Jeremy in the Labour Party is getting more and more desperate. So they'll grab anything or work with anybody to try and discredit him or attack his allies or remove his allies from positions and so on. And that is what is going on. And it comes out in many guises. And I think for listeners, the important thing is not to be distracted by these things, but just say, look, this is part of the usual attacks on Jeremy. And they're trying to do this now because of the elections happening in the councils, some of the councils, especially in London, on Thursday, which will be taken. Well, if Jeremy does badly, it'll be taken as an opinion poll for Jeremy. If Jeremy does well, they'll say it's luck or something. Now, I think it is effectively going to be an opinion poll on Jeremy, and he will do well. Or put it this way, to be precise, the Labour Party will do well. Although, quite often in the councils, what you've got is people are going to be voting for Jeremy Corbyn, but they're going to get the leader of the council they've had, who's spent a lot of time attacking him. And this happens in quite a lot of councils. Nevertheless, if these people are re-elected on the back of support for Jeremy, there will be moves, because there'll be new councillors as well, for more openness and more accountability. And the things you've been talking about, of course, are about openness and accountability. And you know, it's really important now that we fight for those things, which means a good vote for Labour. Now, I know there's plenty of other people standing for this or saying they do, but you see, in election time, they come up with all sorts of stuff. We've got the Liberal Democrats suddenly being more progressive, and various opponents of Jeremy's radical solutions, or moderate but reasonable and honest accountability solutions, if you like. Though they're suddenly saying they support Jeremy, but probably don't in reality. But as I said, we have to vote for them nevertheless and demand the accountability, which is the new wave in the Labour Party.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, and probably enough to said on that subject, really. I've been following it on Twitter, and everybody can see the actual video where Mark Wadsworth gets up and says something very kind of straightforward, which shouldn't have been misinterpreted the way it was, put it that way. And you can see how ridiculous the whole thing is. And I think it's been shown up now to be what it is. And yes, the tactics are getting rather tired, so we should probably move on from that. You have some news on the global warming front, don't you? Because
yes, indeed. Well, it's running and running now. I did say early in the spring that we were going to have many cold blasts this spring, and our solar lunar action technique has predicted 5 cold blasts this spring. We had them all, and one or two, but one notably warm spell during April. We predicted all these things, and of course the cold blasts are completely contrary to the CO2 story. Now, I was in Imperial College today at the Alumni Festival, being one of the graduates of 1968, 50 years ago, where we were given medals for our diligence and so forth, which was great fun. But I went along to a couple of meetings where the global warming story was being repeated, and found that unfortunately the same nonsense comes out from the other side, which is not surprising because they are getting more and more desperate. I mean, I pointed out that the data shows that carbon dioxide levels are an effect, not a cause, of climate, i.e. temperatures. And that all the alarmist proposals, prognoses of the United Nations in the last 10 or 18 years have failed. In particular, we were promised the end of snow. We haven't had that. We were promised more hurricanes in America, and we've had less. So, Joanna Haigh, now the head of the Grantham Institute, was speaking, and she realised there were some problems in what she had been saying. So she jumped in and said, yes, it's true that carbon dioxide and temperatures move together, and it's true that first of all the temperatures change and then the carbon dioxide changes. And her argument is something like, well, yes, there's some sort of trigger from the sun or something which makes temperatures change a bit, and then more carbon dioxide comes out of the sea, and then more and more of it comes out, and that causes warming. But you see, there's no evidence of that. It's just a supposition, because when you look at the actual data, the way they model climate doesn't work, and the jet stream is in the wrong place, i.e. it's not moving north as their theory would have, but it's moved south. So they don't have an answer, but they obfuscate their failings. And there was quite a lot of young people there, some of whom were clearly a bit alarmed to hear what they'd been told isn't true. And some of them carried on being brainwashed, I would say. But quite a few came up to me afterwards and took information and said they'd go on our website. And I ended up by saying, well, look, when are you going to end wind farms which stop killing birds and revert to evidence-based science? We didn't get an answer, but well, I'm happy to say that the reception was quite good under the circumstances.
Yeah, the thing is with this, it sort of starts off a reaction which revolves around ad hominems and anger rather than reason.
Oh, yes.
And this is the big problem with the other side's lack of argument skills, really. In other words, they attack you. I mean, that mini essay...
You don't believe in blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. Well,
it said, where did you find these two? They look like they're out of a 70s horror film. Now, that may or may not be the case, okay? But what's that got to do with talking about the mini ice age? You know, you get these kind of ridiculous comments, and they don't add information. So there is generally that reaction, and that reaction is one that we're used to, because if you come up with a kind of revisionist or contrary theme to the mainstream narrative, people are programmed, Pavlovian technique.
Yeah. For anything this goes, any of the main narratives.
React like that, So to find people who will engage with you after some of that is quite good, really. And I think that is the purpose of all this, because those talks we did, people did come see you and me, and they'd heard a bit about Windows on the World and knew about you, obviously. But the point is that there were people who were sceptical who were listening, and that's great. But it's when it comes, because it's a religious thing. Climate change is a religion, and that is the problem. And we've talked about this before, that you've got religious zealots who are absolutely going to live or die by it. And that's very cleverly how it's been manufactured. And we've talked about this in our shows. I mean, I go into that, in fact, the social engineering behind it than the actual site to you and other people, even though I've read the IPCC reports, and anybody can read them. But what astonishes me is people will just repeat things that they've been told, but when you even go to the sources of what they're talking about, they don't even really know about that either.
No, they don't. And the sources, well, often the sources aren't there. They've just got a belief that everyone else believes it, you know. And I say, well, one, that's not true, and two, it's irrelevant. The evidence is what is the only thing that counts in science. And for heaven's sake, I'm talking in Imperial College, so, you know, if it doesn't count there, it's not going to count anywhere. But an interesting side effect of all this stuff is people following the green story, they realise there's something wrong because they've heard me or others saying things. So instead, they carry on sort of believing, saying, but for other reasons. Like I met somebody there who said, well, yeah, okay, it might not be right what they say, but surely we're going to run out of energy from coal or oil sometime in the future. So we ought to go along with this. You see, in other words, well, you can believe a lie if it helps something else. Now, I don't believe in that as a way forward. I don't think that telling lies in order to do something supposedly good will ever result in anything effective. But that was a thing that came across. So this woman was worried about, well, there might be 400 years of coal under Britain, but what about after that? And I said, well, look, we want to go for a lower cost energy, and in 400 years' time anyway, probably there will be much cheaper ways of converting solar power into electricity than there is now. So, yeah, you know, and I said, look, when the Stone Age didn't end because the world ran out of stones. I mean, things move forward. But as it is, we're just in an energy game where certain people, especially oil companies, are benefiting from the increased prices resulting from the green story, and birds are being killed as a consequence of the green story. And you know, we have to have evidence-based science to drive us forwards. And hopefully, during the summer, you and I, Mark, will be putting forward more of this stuff in the festivals coming up, which is going to be quite a number of them, I understand.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Merthyr Rising, got Sunrise, several others, and of course we in the June the 16th we're going to be down in Glastonbury.
And the Levellers one, yep.
And the Levellers, yes, but we've got while I think of it, our 16th of June, I think Saturday the 16th of June. If people want to register their interest, we've had a few already, and we will be putting out an advert for that. And I think the King Arthur pub, where it's going to be, putting an advert out as well. Got a venue, got a venue room there back in the King Arthur pub, and we're going to be doing some talks there in the afternoon, and probably there's going to be an event in the evening. So it's a great place to meet up, actually, and discuss things, because as we were talking about last week, finding that people now are sending in an enormous amount of information, which is really, really prescient and powerful. And I said, let's form an invisible kind of organisation. In other words, we form an organisation that doesn't have a name, and it's not really got an umbrella. It's basically, we'll put the information out and we'll relay information to other people, but we're not some kind of movement or anything like that, because they always get taken down, don't they? So people acting individually as part of a loose group is a very good idea. And the stuff I'm being sent is remarkable. It's stuff that I wouldn't have necessarily found, and that's what's called joining the dots, and that's what I'm really interested in. So we tend to cover a large area, but everything is absolutely interlinked, and that's why I often do shows where I just talk about this stuff and it refer to all these different areas, because everything's interlinked. But we talked about the 5G rollout, and we're now getting people telling us more stuff about what's going on in their area about that. And of course, it's gone into all things like these. They're using this excuse of LED streetlights, and this is something I was going to mention actually. It's this starfish network, it's called, but that's the main purpose of this is it's going to be part of the Internet of Things, which will help collect information on traffic, parking, noise and air quality, to name but a few. And this is all being rolled out. So when people talk about these LEDs in streetlights, it's the tip of the iceberg. And Mark Steele took apart one of these installations that's been put into a streetlight, and he said it's not just for switching the lights on and off. It's 5G transmitter. And this is getting quite worrying, because we started off this show today, Piers, you weren't with us, but it was about the council basically abusing their power.
Councils will abuse powers unless they're forced into be accountable.
That's exactly what we did. We made them be accountable, and we played the phone call with this guy, and he was saying, well, she was issued a fine and blah, 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 and I said, and you decided, did you? You decided. So you are liable for uploading that picture, which came from a private company, that they've shot on their body cameras, and you decided that you were going to put that up, and you decided that that person was guilty of an offence. You decided that, not a court. And because she was issued a fine and she didn't pay it because she didn't give her name, well, that's not an offence. So she didn't give her name to a private company. Since when has that been an offence? It's not an offence.
Exactly.
So
and no private company's got powers to quiz you like that.
No, not at all. And the point was that he talked over me, and he said, well, you have to go through complaints procedure. I said, no, not, well, what's the point of going through that complaints procedure? What I did was I got onto the CEO of the council and the leader of the council, who didn't respond, but the CEO of the council, well, we won't go through the letter because we read it out at the beginning, but I put them on the spot about what they were actually doing, and then I got a note back saying the contents of your email have been duly noted, and the next thing is none of it's there. So 1 minute they can do it, and they can't. So I think they need to make their minds up and also run it by their legal department, because this is the tip of the iceberg, though. If they're going to do things like that and surveil people for putting their bin bags out on the wrong day, but we just talked about how they're mining data and how they're doing with data mining companies. And we haven't got enough time to get through it all tonight, but I've just been looking at this stuff, and it's all about data collection, because we featured that massively on the show last week. And this fella sent me all of this stuff. He used to work within one of these companies, and he sent me these links, which are the partner companies of the council, the data mining corporations. And basically, this stuff doesn't end anywhere. There is no data protection with it, absolutely none. And that's why it is very important to hold them accountable. And of course, to get back to your subject, Piers, a lot of this this came out of climate action plans. A lot of what councils enforce is all down to the agenda, isn't it?
Oh, yes, they do things in the name of saving the planet all over the place, all the time. In fact, I pointed that out to some people in Imperial today, that, look, in the name of saving the planet, the United Nations and International Monetary Fund are wanting to spend millions on dams all over the Amazon basin. And these will end the tribes living there and their land, and will actually produce more methane than the carbon dioxide the whole operation is supposed to end. I mean, leaving aside the nonsense of their theories about CO2 and methane anyway, but that apart, even in their own terms, the plan is complete nonsense. Yet it's being driven by big money. But of course, once you start building dams, there's big investment, big spending, and the IMF love it. The whole of Wall Street love it. The whole of the electricity generating systems love it. But, you know, it's of no benefit to anybody in true green terms. It's what we call a totally fake green scheme.
Absolutely, and there's loads of them. And once you realise that this is behind everything, it's behind shutting all the roads off. Well, it started off with 20 miles per hour zones and road humps, and what we've got everywhere now, 20 miles per hour zones on all the roads. It's incredible how that one's spread. And of course, every borough is proud to make you go at 20 miles an hour. And
Yeah.
This is where it starts. But the thing is that people often don't get the way it links up, because all of that stuff about the traffic calming, which is traffic trauma, and obviously terrible if you're in an ambulance, all the rest of it, these road humps, it all came out of this green agenda. But by going over them, you're pushing out much more pollution, because you're slowing down and then speeding up again, accelerating and pumping out.
Oh, absolutely. It's not good for car
totally
engines.
Yeah. Oh, we've just got a comment here. Yeah, I bet the council lawyers are only trained in contract law and know sod all about criminal law. Well, that may or may not be the case, but the people who are actually lawyers for the council are lawyers, so they must know about criminal law. I mean, there was one who'd been the lawyer for Waltham Forest Council for about 20 years, and he stopped responding to me in the end. But what you have to do is...
What a wise fellow.
Well, yes, exactly. Where there's controversy, there's a claim, But the point is that I got them on the back foot, and I took them to court and all this stuff. And it's like this little victory from last week. It's another victory. In other words, that fella was telling me that he was absolutely in the right, that he'd done exactly the right thing, that he can put anyone's picture up there, and there's going to be no comeback on him. Well, oh yes, well, I think somebody may have tapped him on the shoulder and said, take it down. Yeah. Because they've obviously got worried. So they do worry about this stuff. And that's
they do. But they only worry when the people are, just... Well, channels like Windows on the World, which are getting the message out. I mean, these type of legalistic bureaucrats wouldn't care a damn if nobody was calling them to account in public, and that is, the shame, and that's why we need, to have accountable politicians, as I've said before.
Well, that's a very good thing to kind of be wrapping the show up with. We're going to be sort of winding down a bit and say, is Chris still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yes.
How's the green agenda affecting you there? Have you got anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, actually, it's true what Piers says. It's a religion. My local council is absolutely obsessed with it. And, I mean, the street looks a complete mess with all these bins out every 2 weeks. And... what they're doing, they're changing everything to parks now. So I used to live in Rags Valley, and now it's Rosedale Park, because they're going to have rampant building. And I don't know.
Your land values will go up. Well, if it's renamed a park, that's probably what they're up to.
Ah, that's what it's about.
Yeah. And then they'll get a developer to move into such and such. Oh, you can build in such and such park. Now, that must be worth a good few grand or 100 grand if it's a big enough house on the value of the house.
Well, what they're doing all these gated communities where I live.
Where yes, very important, Chris, because they're doing that in everywhere, and that's in your borough as well, Piers, isn't it? We said that when we went to the council meeting. Yes.
Oh yeah.
But they've got to have their jet spray, because that's part of their marker. Because the dogs go around cocking their legs up. Lampposts. Right. Well, you'll always have the folks with the green wellies with their little jet sprays going pss, 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 because they're sort of marking their territory.
Well, that's in Hertford, though, Chris. I mean, we're talking about the inner city here.
Yeah, but
sorry, I lost you a minute. Yeah, but this gated community thing is very important, because all of this crime that seems to have happened, this crime wave that's come up in the last months with all these stabbings, well, it's been going on all year, but it escalated and it started to get traction all over the press. So in other words, then it becomes a media-sponsored event, and that's actually what it is. Because once you start putting these things in the media, people will start doing them more. It's the hive mind mentality, and we did talk about that. But crime is being farmed, in my opinion, because the outcome of all this. Now, I read about this a long time ago. We covered the Dr. Richard Day lecture. He talked all about this. This is a guy in 1969 who made all these predictions. Find it on windowsonaworld.net, or just look Dr. Richard Day, 1969, The New Barbarians. It's absolutely amazing. But we've got everything on that link to the website, and it's called Social Engineers Then and Now. There's 2 parts to it. But they were talking about crime would be introduced. But what he was saying, that the police state, the powers of the police state would increase, but crime would increase as well. And he said, that may sound contradictory, but it's not, because these things will complement each other. And that's a really strange thing for people, for someone to say. But what they want, the useful idiots who are working for the powers that be, are people locked in these gated communities, because it's all about surveillance and control. This is a control grid that's been put in. That's all. It's only about control. So the idea is that you've got very compliant population who are living in high density areas with just very limited places to go, and also a belief that they shouldn't really need to go anywhere else, because if you've got a shopping mall, and this is what they're doing with all these places that I see being built all over London, they've got a mini Tesco underneath, they've got a gym, and there's some kind of place locally that's a bar or a cinema. They don't want you going out of that area. That's the whole point of it. And that's a hugely important thing that we cover a lot, because when it comes down to it, it's all about a global agenda that's happening. It's nothing to do with your local council. It's about something that happens all over the world, and they have conferences for it every 2 years called Habitat. We have Agenda 2030, but the Habitat conferences are where it all comes, and we did this a few weeks ago, and nobody knows about it because they don't publicise it. It's not for the public to know about. It's on a need-to-know basis, and the lobbyists and the people who are going to be imposing it, and people who are chosen to go there, are the ones who go. It's not for us, but they're implementing it.
It's council officers just propagate this stuff as if it's a complete necessity, and just tell councillors, and most councillors don't have the time to check anything, and they do what they're told.
Yes, or they'll say it's a hugely discredited conspiracy theory when it's a 40-chapter document. They're asking for a debate. You don't want one now.
Well, it's just they're common documents, as you point out. There's nothing secret about 2030 or Agenda 21. But when you talk about them, you're told this is conspiracy. Well, that is absurd. It's just fact.
Yeah, and interestingly, last week in Waltham Forest, they had the different groups, different organisations got together for this hustings, and it was interesting. As I think I said this in the first part of the show, that I'd like to get your response to it as well, Piers, that you've got these two separate poles now. You've got people who talk about walking and cycling and walkable communities and public transport, and they don't mention cars at all. It's like they don't go anywhere where there's a car and they've never seen one. It's totally bizarre that they don't know how things are going to come into everything comes in by road. Everything comes in by road, Nothing comes in. You haven't got a railway track at the back of your local kebab shop, have you? Everything comes in by road, right? So everything. So you cannot factor traffic out, and this is the really weird thing. So at this hustings, you have people who are talking about, we want people to be able to park for more than 15 minutes. We can't get in. The business people are going mad. And you've got the people going, we want walkable communities and we want cycling. But it's like they haven't seen it. It's been wiped from their memory. Do you have this in Chris? Because obviously people have more cars there, I would think, generally.
Well, you've got to have a car around here, really, because the transport is absolutely useless unless you're worth a few quid. It costs a fortune. So, yes, we've got to have cars. But, as I said earlier, they're putting in this 20-mile-an-hour zone between Waltham Cross and North Hoddesdon. But the other thing there's I heard on is to narrow the roads to have bus lanes.
Yep.
So instead of having a minor traffic jam, you have an absolute major one. It's absolutely, I'm wondering whether somebody slipped some hallucinogenic substance into the planner's tea or something. I mean,
well, it's not them that's doing it, Chris. It's coming from the Habitat conferences and the Agenda 2030, because why is it the same all over the world? So, in other words, you're talking about something that's happening in Hertford. But why is it happening in Waltham Forest? Why is it happening all over London? Why is it happening in Southwark? Why is it happening in Enfield? Because it's a global action plan implemented locally. So yes, you've got a 40-foot pavement, and you've got some square cubes on it that, for some weird reason, they think people are going to sit there, right? So it's like that elephant and castle here. You go through it on the bus. Yeah, we've been down there on the bus. I've been down there with you on the bus, and it's like a toy town layout that doesn't look real.
That's right.
And then you've got these huge roundabouts where nobody would want to sit.
And it's windswept. It feels windswept and I don't see. I just don't like it, you know.
Well, no, you've got putting a palm tree in a planter in the middle of, like a traffic jam is not really going to help. What's the point, you know? So you've got the road narrowed, you've got the bus lane, then you've got the cycle lane, and you've got 40-foot pavements, and then you've got...
And a bus bottleneck down there,
Yeah, places to sit, somebody would want to sit. And the places where the benches were, where people congregate, have been taken away. So everywhere that you want to sit, you can't. And where you wouldn't want to sit, they assume that you're going to.
Yes, that's right.
But it's that sort of mentality, isn't it? As what I was saying about earlier about wabbies, woolly-headed, half-baked intellectuals. They think in reverse. What's good is bad, and what is bad is good.
Yeah.
I was talking about a roundabout. Nice roundabout. Grass, trees, good. Wabby thought that's bad. We've got to make it look like a, absolute eyesore. And this is the way I've found all the way through their mentality. I mean, you ought to work in an architect's office. A lot of them are out to lunch most of the time, and they live in what I say Goldilocks syndrome. They're in cloud cuckoo land most of the time, you know.
But where do they actually live? The people that are doing this planning and making these absurd schemes which cause traffic jams. I mean, I presume they don't live in the areas where they're making these things happen. But I mean, they must.
Well, I think they do, but they don't notice it. That's the thing. They live in a kind of different type of world. I mean, I worked with an architect that lived in a slum, basically, and he was proud of it. But he looked at... I mean, I'll give you an example, and this is 100% truth. He said, he was a Canadian. He said, it's lovely to see communal art. They've arranged the bin bags in a certain way to make it look just abstract. I said, no, they've done litter here. I am serious, 100% serious. And I thought he was joking, and he was 100% serious. And you do get them thinking in a totally different way. You feel like hitting your head against the wall.
Good solution there, Chris, because if the council have got their cameras up and they're saying you put your bin bags out on the wrong day, or your business has put their rubbish in the wrong bag on the wrong day, you can say, well, it's an art installation.
That's right. The old saying was it's a statement. Yeah. They always used to say, this was going back to the 80s, they always used to say...
I'm making an art statement. Don't offend me.
Yeah. And they said, it's only unpleasant because it's new. You've got to get used to it. That was the other thing.
That's the other thing, Chris. Yeah. You just don't like change, do you? You don't like change.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. This is what you had all the time. Yeah. I mean, I actually worked on a project in Stevenage once, and they was replacing 15 houses with 80 dwellings. And they had a sand pit outside an elderly person's housing development where, it's old folks' home. So that's where the women from the flats hang their washing out and the children can play in the sand pit. And I said, well, no, what's going to happen is dogs are going to use it as a toilet and the women are not going to use the communal drying area, going to hang it over the balconies. That's exactly what they did. And, and also the communal car park at the back. And what was that area? A dumping area for old sofas. And a road that was so narrow that it was a wiggly-woggly road that you could only get one car down. And when I said, well, people are going to park along there and block the road, they say, oh, no, it's a community. They won't do that. I said, yes, they will.
Everything's a community, though, you see, under Agenda 21. So you can define some bin bags as a community, and they have rights the same as you do. So the council may not be able to take them away because they have rights. But the point is that I got in touch with Waltham Forest about what is their definition of fly tipping, because they were putting pictures on Twitter of neatly tied up bags of rubbish, little bags of rubbish, by bins which had obviously clearly overflowing, right? So that's not fly tipping. Putting something neatly by a bin that they're going to collect is not fly tipping. Then there was a sofa outside someone's house. Now, that means that generally the person's phoned the council up and say, can you take the sofa away? It's not fly tipping. So I've asked them on numerous occasions, my name's Walt, can I help you? I'm Walt. I said, yes. What's your definition of fly tipping? Is it this, is it that, or is it this? They can't respond to it. And then I get this Clean Litter London. They go, look what Waltham Forest are like. Look at the amount of fly tipping in the borough, and they haven't done anything about it. And they send me all these pictures of horrendous fly tips. You know, they've got like beds and bricks and bits of cars, and it's just a complete mess, right? And they go, this is fly tipping, right? And it's all builder's waste. And then they go, yeah, but we're going to take some pictures of these little bags by a public bin, and we're going to call that fly tipping because that's probably what our NSL officers are looking for. They're not going around the backs of places looking in the corner of car parks for stuff that's genuinely been dumped. You know? Good stuff, though. I think we're getting out of time, so it's time to hand everything back to Tony.
Yeah, great stuff, chaps. Piers and
Chris.
Great
to be here.
And Mark, excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to all the listeners. Thanks to everyone in chat, especially. Sorry we didn't get around to all the comments. We're wishing you the best of weeks, and we hope to see you again next week at 9 o'clock. Cheers, everyone.
Reversal of the poles.